So with the SL class, we are currently looking at absolute value function. Now we're going to look at the modulus equation that involves the absolute value sign. So I need us to first discuss these properties, the properties of the modulus function. The modulus of x, we all know, is non-negative. It could be 0. Okay? So these are the things that you are going to be needing when you either prove or when you are citing a reason. So I need you to pay attention. The modulus is definitely non-negative. So it could be 0 or positive. The absolute value of x, when you square it, is the same as x squared. Understand? So for example, if you have absolute value of, oh, I thought I was showing you my book. Apparently I was showing you the board, sorry. Okay, let me share my book. This is what I thought I was showing you. So absolute value of x is non-negative. Absolute value of x all squared is the same as x squared. Understand? Understand the second one? Now,
yes.
Absolute value works just like the square root. So if you're taking the absolute value of a fraction, it's the same as taking the absolute value of different part of the fraction. Okay? Now, the absolute value of a negative number is the same as the absolute value of the positive of that number. This is something trivial. Okay? Now, if you have a product of two numbers in the absolute value, you can separate them into separate absolute values. These are trivial things, okay? And similarly, the absolute value of x minus y is absolute value of y minus x, which means if you have a subtraction, the order of the number does not matter. I wonder why Elsie is looking down, not looking at the screen. That shows you're not part of what I'm explaining because you're not even, you don't care about what I'm saying. If you're not ready, just leave the class. I can't be talking about something and you're doing something else. All right, so that's that. So please, these 6 properties, we will be needing them, over as time goes on. But this is an easy topic, so I thought, okay, we can quickly discuss it within a short time. So this is something we will also make use of as time goes on. Let's look at this. Maybe I write this on the board so that you can understand. Or even we will need some, maybe I write like a short notes that can be put in our books. Right, so today is April 4th, okay. So we may take this down. So modulus equation. Today will be about modulus equation, tomorrow will be about modulus inequality. Understand and apply properties of absolute value function or modulus function. So the properties. As said earlier, it is negative. If you have a fraction, it doesn't matter the sec 159. This is the part where the SL don't need to worry about. So it's just for the HL, the equation and the inequality. But the SL, or everybody, is expected to learn what we did in class, which is the graph. So I'll start by saying let's X and Y be real numbers. Okay. Then absolute value of X is non-negative. So it could be 0 or positive. It can never be negative. We've learned that in the graph. We've seen that in the graph. Understand? Second property, if you square the absolute value, it's the same as squaring this itself. I could add more information by saying, e.g., absolute value of -2 is going to be 2. Absolute value of 0 is going to be 0, and so on like that. For example, here, if you take absolute value of -2 squared, it's going to be 2 squared, which is 4. Okay, you can see that because absolute value of that, okay, which is the same, which is equal to 4, and this 4 is actually -2 squared. So you can see if X is -2, this property holds. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. We talked about fraction. The same as separating them, provided Y is non-zero. What happens when Y is equal to 0? Anyone?
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
What do you mean it's not possible?
It doesn't exist in real.
Say that again, Elson.
It doesn't exist for real numbers.
It doesn't exist. Real or complex, you can't have 0 at the bottom. Just say it doesn't exist. Well done.
Okay.
So number 4. So for example, in this case, I'm looking for the absolute value of -2/3, which would be 2/3. It's as good as absolute value of -2 divided by absolute value of 3. Something like that. Okay. And then absolute value of -x is the same thing as absolute value of x. I think this is also trivial. Absolute value of the product is just the product of the absolute value. Finally, absolute value of a difference is the same when you change the operands, the order of the operand. So here, absolute value of -5 is the same thing as absolute value of 5. Here, absolute value of maybe -2 times 3 is going to be 6. You agree with me that that 6 is actually the product of absolute value of -2 times absolute value of 3. And finally, what this is trying to say is that absolute value of 7 minus 2, which is going to be absolute value of 5, which is going to be 5, is actually the same as absolute value of -5, which is actually the same as absolute value of 2 minus 7. So the order does not matter. In particular, you can actually re-explain this using property 4. Everybody look at the board. Absolute value of x minus y is the same as absolute value of minus brackets y minus x. Do you agree? Right?
Yeah.
And if you use
Yeah.
property 4, using this property, this is the same as absolute value of what?
The negative of the
I'm
x
using
minus
this
y.
property now. What will I write next? Absolute value of
y minus x.
y minus x. Thank you, Yanko. This property is saying is the same thing if you remove the minus. All I need you to do is remove this minus. So you can actually explain it using that property. Alex, is there a problem?
No,
So I don't like absolute silence when I'm asking questions.
I just don't get it just now.
All right.
Now I get it.
Now, the last thing I was going to explain before I thought, okay, we write this in our books, is the fact that this is a result. If absolute value of x is a, then x must be plus or minus a. And to explain that, or to prove that, now, absolute value of x is equal to a. Are you listening?
Mhm.
I need you to listen, please.
Mhm.
From absolute value of is equal to a, we can square both sides. If you square both sides, you have this is equal to a squared. Is that not? Which of the properties does this look like? Property what?
2.
2.
2. And by that property 2, the left-hand side will be what?
X squared.
X squared.
X squared.
Why this remains a squared. Understand? By property 2. Then we can take the square root. Okay?
Yes.
And that is how it becomes plus or minus a. Understand? So we're going to, when we are solving equation, we will need to square both sides at some point. If you square your absolute value, you remember this property too. If one side is not an absolute value, you can actually use this result. So there are 2 things we need to take away from here. Okay, we'll consider it in questions very soon. So please take note of the last line, especially. So take note of this. Very important. Should I say here by property 2? Okay, so take note of that. All right, so let's start solving equations, and the rest is going to be your practice time. I will play example for you so we can save some time. Do you also have your calculator with you at home?
Yeah.
Okay. So make sure your calculator is nearby, because I will also show you how to use graphical approach, because there are some questions that requires graphical approach. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen with you. I have saved this, so We don't have to get ourselves delayed. You let me know if you can hear the sound or if you cannot. Can you hear the sound?
Equations which involve the absolute
Yes.
value function
Yes.
or modulus function are called modulus equations. If the absolute value of x, or in part B, equations which involve the absolute value function or modulus function are called modulus equations. If the absolute value of x, or mod x, is a positive constant a, then x could be a or minus a. We can use this property to solve many modulus equations. In part A, mod 2x plus 3 equals 7. Using the property we have just seen, 2x plus 3 could be 7 or minus 7. We can split
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, but
That's
is it
just
just
using
me?
the property that has just been proved. All right.
this into
So you can write it directly. That's what it says. You can write it directly. And this is only because you have a positive number. Remember, our absolute value will always be a positive number.
Yes.
Okay? Mhm.
two separate equations, each giving a possible solution. For 2x plus 3 equals 7, we subtract 3 from both sides, then divide both sides by 2. For 2x plus 3 equals minus 7, we again subtract 3 from both sides, then divide both sides by 2. The possible solutions are x equals 2 and x equals minus 5.
Let's check that. When x is 2, this is 4 plus 3. Absolute value of 7 is 7. When x is minus 5, negative 10 plus 3 is negative 7. Absolute value of that is 7. Can you see?
Mhm.
So you should be able to substitute back to check if the solution you have obtained satisfies the equation. Let's look at the second part.
You may have noticed that we had to perform the same in
Wait, does this make sense? The second part.
Yes.
Absolute
Yeah.
value of 3 minus 2x is equal to negative 1.
Yes, it makes sense.
Yes.
Wait, what?
That's it. It's negative.
Yeah.
Any comments? Alex, you were saying something.
It's negative. Is it supposed to, or does it? I don't think so. Maybe.
The x can be negative. It's just the result of the
The absolute
Absolute value.
of an equation shouldn't be negative.
Shouldn't be negative. No one is asking for x can't or cannot be negative, Carter. We are talking about, does this problem make sense?
oh, that's my bad.
I'm asking, does the problem make sense? I'm not asking for the answer. We don't even know what the answer is, if there is any answer. Does that make sense? Does
Yes.
everybody get my question?
Yes.
Yes.
So, does that problem make sense?
No.
Not to me.
That means if you draw the graph of 3 minus 2x, you can get something at negative 1. Is that possible?
No.
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 All the graphs we have drawn for absolute value, it doesn't cross, it doesn't cross the x-axis. It touches the x-axis, it doesn't cross. Is that not? So
Yes.
listen to this.
inverse operations to solve both linear equations. With care, we can keep just the one equation and perform the inverse operations just once. We subtract 3 from both sides, then divide both sides by 2. So, x is minus 3 plus 7 all over 2, which is 2, or minus 3 minus 7 all over 2, which is minus 5. This method requires careful thought, but may save you some writing. In part B, we have
You understand that this is an alternative approach to question 1. Instead of separating them from here, you can take minus 3 just like we do in quadratic, completing the square method. You can take this away, divide by 2, and once you get here, then you separate them. Or you can separate them from the beginning, your choice. But don't write below each other this way. You should write them this way, separating them. All right. So when you come here, you have this here, you have the other one here, then your 2 and minus 5 will be below. Anyways.
Mod 3 minus 2x equals minus 1. Can the absolute value of any real number be negative? No, the absolute value cannot be negative, as it is a distance. There are therefore no solutions.
So just say, since all you have to do is state the first property. Since absolute value of A is greater than or equal to 0, then this problem has no solution. I said A because the question asks X as the variable. Do you understand? Since the question asks X as the variable, you shouldn't use X again. So you shouldn't state something like this. You change this to A or P, something like that. Okay, let me write properly what I'm saying. So if I was to solve that problem, or if you want to solve that problem for me, so after the question, because you have to be able to justify, since the absolute value of P must be greater than or equal to 0 for all P in R, okay, what you are trying to say is that this left-hand side cannot be negative, And so then there exists no solution. Okay, so something like that. All right, now I want you to, I will put this, I'll put, okay, you should write this later, maybe when you check the video. But first, I want us to do some practice. So using that example, look at these questions. Can you start with question 1? Do question 1, F and I. F and I, this last two. F and I, this last two, quickly. And send to me privately on WeChat. F and I, you have 5 minutes for both. I'll pause the recording now. We'll continue recording after you are done.